none, and I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Pulitz,
Present?
Vice Chair Norvell,
Present.
Treasurer Rogers,
Here.
Member Golden,
Here.
Member Hamilton,
Here.
Member Hutter, Member Horton.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Okay, with a quorum is present, now we'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Corey, would you like to lead us this time? All right.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our past meeting? And we'd like to go ahead and call for a motion to approve the minutes. Is there anybody have any changes to the minutes? No? Then I'll call for a motion to approve.
I so move.
I second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. Approval of the minutes has been passed. Now, as the first time as chairman, I'm going to go a little slow here since I don't know exactly how to do this, but I'm going to follow my notes here. The chairman reserves the right to modify the agenda in order to most effectively process the agenda items. Items may be taken out of order, items may be combined for consideration by the authority, and items may be pulled or removed from the agenda at any time. Under public comment, any members of the public who wish to address the airport authority may speak on agendized and non-agendized matters related to the airport. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person or topic. If your item requires extended discussion, please request the chairman to calendar the matter for a future airport authority meeting. Is there any public comment at this time? Okay, very good. If that's the case, then I guess we can go ahead and move on to the airport engineers report. Nadine?
Hello, Nadine Burgard with Armstrong. First, project update on the list. I'm going to have Mike Dickin just give us a little bit of update on the snow removal equipment.
Good evening, Mike Dickin, Armstrong Consultants. I don't have any new information with regards to the plow truck. I spent an hour with Silver State International this morning. The truck is programmed for construction, but it's nowhere near the line yet. So there is no telling really an accurate time frame. I'm not going to speculate or guess. The sales rep is very frustrated internally with what's going on, but I don't have any good information at this time.
And so for the aeronautical survey for a nighttime approach project, phase 3, which is the construction of the offset PAPI, the grant offer from the FAA was received and accepted, signed last month. And I believe discussion or, note later in the meeting here about providing notice of award for Titan Electrical to proceed with that project and essentially the rest of their contract documents. And as for the snow removal equipment building, word from the FAA on that is that the grant offer letter is pending and it's should be arriving sometime beginning of September. And so once that is set forth, we still would like to see an award recommendation for the contractor, the low bidder, Houston Smith Construction. And that is all I have for updates. If there are any questions, I can take them now.
And Nadine, this is just a quizzical question, but regarding the snow removal equipment, was there ever an option for us to go back and say, can we revise the actual specs to get something a year earlier, or was that even an option for us?
Um, Well, at the time, there didn't appear to be a need to revise the specs to get a truck earlier than we thought it would take.
Right,
It
we
was,
knew that, yeah, to begin with.
when you issued the purchase order, and my conversations with both the plow manufacturer and the truck manufacturer was, it was anticipated it was basically a year to a year and a half program at that time.
Right.
And so that's the good faith that we all put into what we were told and move forward with it that way.
And that was understood at the time, but now that we're seeing that it's exceeding that,
Yeah, and
is there any option whatsoever to go back and say, is
Well-
there a reasonable way to move it because of parts availability or?
it's
I don't
not,
know.
it is truly not anything special as far as a truck goes.
It's not.
It is a very standard international heavy-duty rear axle, single axle drive dump truck.
Got it.
Yeah, it's pretty much a plain Jane, and honestly, we spec'd it that way because International, the dealership is in Reno, and they are a well-respected truck manufacturer, and
Yeah.
parts and everything is assumed to be readily available, except,
Right.
I guess, when you're building them.
It's just.
I understand.
Hard to imagine that.
I
being-
share the pain.
Yeah, and we really, this year, when we had the record snowfall, would have been nice,
Sure.
but understood. Okay, any other questions for Mike or Nadine? All right, thank you. Okay, with that, we can move on to our consent agenda, item G. And this is for possible action to award and execute an FAA contract for AIP 43 Phase 3 approach lighting construction to the responsive apparent low bidder. Okay, well, let me finish since I started. Titan Electric Contracting, Inc., in the amount of $236,557.50. Is there any staff comments? No, okay, good. Then, basically, what we have to do is, would someone like to propose a motion to go ahead and accept this and go for signatures?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, proposed motion passes. Is there some paperwork for us to sign on that, Corey, that we have to sign today, or how's that work?
Yes, I don't see any reason why we couldn't sign it today. And we have printed copies in the board packets, so we can get that executed after the meeting.
Okay, good, and then it goes on to the city as well, or is that it?
This
Yes.
would not go to the city.
Okay, very good.
Titan did all of the runway lighting during most of it the latter part of November. And snow and rain and ice and mud, and it was amazing. You know, they did a good job.
This should be much smaller project for them than that. So hopefully hopefully it doesn't run into winter too much.
Okay, and then we'll move on to the public hearings, item H. For discussion and possible action, the Carson City Airport Authority RFQ Committee to present data collected and resultant ranking regarding the applicants for airport architectural, engineering, and planning services and contracts. The Carson City Airport Authority to determine ranking of consultants and authorize airport manager to engage in fee negotiations with highest ranked consultant or consultants. Staff comments, please.
Okay, so this item was really difficult for me. Both of the engineering qualifications that were submitted were very impressive. On my scorecard, you can tell that the scores were very close. But this item, we created a committee of airport staff and a few of the board members, less than a quorum. We created scorecards according to Advisory Circular 150, 5100-14E, Section 2.8. With these scorecards, we did utilize them to rank the two applicants for, or the two statements of qualifications for engineering. There was only one statement of qualifications for planning. The results of our findings was that Wood Rogers ranked first and that Armstrong Consultants ranked second. So for this item, I'd like for the board to take a look at what we presented. And if anyone has any comments about any of our scoring cards, to please let us know. And for the board to select which, let's see, how do I word this, Steve? Maybe you should do the wording for that.
Yeah, Steve Takis, Airport Council. Yeah, the function of the committee was to collect the data and make it a little easier for you to go through the data. So they've collected the data. They have their own recommendations, but ultimately it's each of you to make your own recommendation, and ultimately you as a body to rank the companies. And so that's in front of you. So I think that if you have discussion on how you would rank them, or you want to challenge or ask questions of any of the people on the committee, this is your opportunity to do that. I would note that you have all the information that they have. So you're in a position to make your own decision. It's not being, force-fed to you in any way. And that's important because the open meeting law says that a committee's real function is to gather information and provide it to you. It's not to tell you what to do necessarily. It's still got to be your decision.
Steve, the members could accept them as ranked.
Yeah, certainly. You've reviewed the material, and if you're okay, if you're good with it, that's one of the things you could do. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any comments from the board members? Yes, John?
I looked at both the submissions and I thought they were both, totally professional. I was impressed. And I'm always somewhat concerned when we decide to go with somebody that we haven't worked with over somebody that we have worked with. And I have no experience working with either of these companies, but I was wondering if there was any, if in the past or in different, role, Corey, that you've had direct, experience working with Wood Rogers.
I don't personally have any experience working with Wood Rogers in the past on any projects. They were, however, a sub on one of the projects that was completed for the airport, and that was related to the approach, although I didn't actually work with them directly. And I believe most of that work took place prior to me being hired, actually. So they have done some work for the airport indirectly as a sub. Of course, I have plenty of experience with Armstrong, and Armstrong has been a fantastic company to work for. I'd highly recommend them to anyone looking for an engineering consultant, as well as us. I will say that my findings were very close, but my results ended up favoring Wood Rogers, primarily because our airport is expecting a potential significant amount of independent development that is not FAA AIP funded. And Wood Rogers has a really large company that are non-aviation engineers. And that was apparent to me. And that's essentially how they ended up with a higher score from me. I think that's all that I've got on it.
If I could just add to that, in the past, we have had work with and contact with some of the principals, and particularly Dean Schultz from Wood Rogers. He used to be the chief operating officer at Reno Tahoe. And so we had many, actually, in earlier days, many dealings with them, and they were very helpful to us. Now, that was when he was an employee of Reno Tahoe Airport Authority, but he is one of the principals on that proposal. So it's not like they're an unknown, but I echo what Corey has said, which Armstrong we've used. We know they're a known entity, and that there's definitely value in that. But Wood Rogers is not alien to us. They also appear to have more experience, and this is just me looking at their stuff, on some of the larger airport stuff, which is the direction we're moving.
And I know this is in the packet, but just to be clear, this is a 5-year engagement that we're going to be negotiating. Is that, did I catch that right?
That is correct. The current contract with Armstrong would be ending in November, so we would be looking to execute a new contract around that period. I think it's probably a good time to state that I would like for Armstrong, regardless of the results today, to continue to work on any projects they've started to work on. And that's going to be pretty clear and apparent because we'll have executed scopes of work with Armstrong for those projects. I wouldn't want to see any contracts be turned over in the middle of a project. So regardless of the outcome today, I wanted to make sure I got that across.
Any other comments from the board? No? Any public comments on this item? Nope. Well, then, if that's the case, then would someone like to propose a motion on this item?
I'd happily do so, Tim.
Okay.
I move to accept the composite rankings as delivered and authorize staff to proceed with the negotiation phase with Wood Rogers and Kaufman. Now, do we have to negotiate with Kaufman since they were the only bidder on this?
Yes, that is a part of the required process.
Okay.
Yep.
Would you like me to restate that then, or is that
I think
clear?
that was good.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. It's been moved, it's been seconded. All those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One nay from John. Okay. Motion passes. Moving on to the airport manager's report.
Okay, for the airport manager's report, we have our fuel flowage numbers here. This, my numbers throughout the year were off for some reason by a couple of percentage points. I recreated my calculations because we now have a new FBO in the field. And with the new calculations, I believe this to be the most accurate. There's no real substantive difference in the numbers. They just all kind of moved in one direction, a couple of percentage points. So for looking at the year as a whole, looking at this month's would be the most accurate. We have a 4% gain over last year this month. This is actually the first time that's actually happened this year. That is partially due to the new fixed-based operator in the field. And I felt that was relevant enough to point out. They are bringing new business to the airport. And I was happy to see that. The numbers were really low for them in June, but the July numbers were really good. So these past couple months have been very busy for me. I probably have not included everything in here, but I'm going to try to hit the high points. I've held some discussions with multiple developers about building hangars and also with airport businesses that are interested in moving to the area. These businesses would impact the airport, but also the surrounding area with facilities off airport as well. Some of these discussions have included reaching out to current airport users and surrounding manufacturers around the airport to try to find ways to accommodate their needs. These efforts look promising as of right now, and we may have some new manufacturers coming to Carson City who will also be bringing some jobs to the area. Kim Palant, the current clerical assistant providing services for the airport through TMCD Books, scheduled some meetings with NNDA and WNDD, that's the Northern Nevada Development Authority and the Western Nevada Development District, to help us locate some grants that we may be able to use to apply for additional funding for staffing for the airport. We were not successful in finding grants for additional staffing at this time, but through that process, we have identified some grants that the airport may qualify for outside of federal funding from the AIP program. We may be able to qualify for funding to cover engineering planning costs for the airport terminal. And as of today, with a meeting with the Western Nevada Development District, we may also have some grants that we would qualify for improving the infrastructure at the airport, bringing utilities into the undeveloped parcels. This is some really good news, and it looks really, really promising. I don't know if the airport has qualified for funding like this before. This is through the state, and also some through the bipartisan infrastructure law for infrastructure development. I will hopefully have a couple of grant applications, not for the next meeting, but the meeting after that for these grants. We're also looking into whether or not we will be able to be the sponsor for these grants directly without needing to go to the city, because this is a separate program from the AIP program. And we're going to be reviewing the qualifications, and we're going to check and see if the airport authority qualifies to be the sponsor of these two grants. I believe that if we don't, I may be able to make it possible that we do within the next couple of months. And I'll definitely be working on that. The Western Nevada Development District is really excited about the airport and what we have to offer to the city. They specified in our meeting today about how they sometimes have difficulty getting funding for Carson City, but because of the opportunities that the airport has available to it, that's going to change. So not only will we be able to apply for these grants for ourselves, this is also going to open the door for the Carson City in general to attract these manufacturers and other large companies to Carson City. It's really good stuff. I mean, I couldn't be happier with the outcome of these results. It wasn't what we went out for originally, but we looked into all the options, and we've got some really promising things available. And I just want to highlight that this is happening because of Kim Palant and her efforts to schedule these meetings and pursue these different funds. She definitely deserves credit for her actions. We were experiencing a noticeable increase in noise complaints, which is common during this time of year. Everyone on the pilots on the authority are aware, but just for everyone else's knowledge, in the summertime, we have increased density altitudes at the airfield, which reduces aircraft performance. These aircraft are not climbing as well as they do during the wintertime. The pilots tend to fly earlier in the morning because of the cooler conditions in the morning. So I take all of these noise complaints very seriously, and I was looking into where they're coming from and why. So what I did is I reached out to the local flight groups, and I attended safety meetings with the local pilots, and I gave presentations on the noise abatement procedures at the airport. And these meetings were very positive, and I also received a lot of good feedback from the pilots. As a result of the feedback that I've received, Tim Poulas, Paul Hamilton, and I are working on improving our noise abatement procedures at the airport. We've already got some preliminary plans, which are looking really good. These include making some changes to the noise abatement procedures that we had published on our website, as well as publishing these on posters in the common areas where the pilots frequent, which would include the FBOs as well as the flight clubs and the nonprofit associations on the airfield. And also putting these on the airfield where the pilots can see these visibly when they're doing their run-ups. This is going to be a work in process, but it shouldn't take too long to execute. We're already pretty happy with our procedures that we've come up with. Paul Hamilton and I have done some flying where we actually did a practical test of these noise abatement procedures. We also simulated different aircraft performance, and we're really happy with the results. And I think that they'll be possible for the pilots. Although, of course, when all this is published, pilots need to think of aircraft safety and general safety first. Our noise abatement procedures are recommendations, not necessarily requirements. Safety comes first. I'm working with a local engineering firm to assess the load reading of the perimeter road, including the stormwater culvert that goes underneath the perimeter road. As of this point, I've had meetings with 2 companies, and I do have a couple of proposals for estimates for costs to get these assessments done. I'll be reviewing those this week and hopefully getting them executed soon. This is triggered because we have some very heavy fuel trucks on the airfield, and right now we are limiting the FBOs to 2,000 pounds or 2,000 gallons of fuel in their trucks. And I want to make sure that we have data that either confirms that that's what we should be doing or supports changing that to something else. I want to make sure we have those solid numbers for that. Harlow Norvell played a big role in getting this started and making sure that we're being fair to all FBOs in the airfield and having the data to back it up. Rick Lee and I have been working with the USDA to reduce wildlife hazards in the airport. Our efforts have definitely paid off. There's been a noticeable reduction in coyote activity and ground squirrel activity in the area. The ground squirrels are definitely an attractant to the coyotes, so reducing that population on the airfield and eliminating their habitats around the airfield has contributed to reducing coyotes on the airfield, which is the big hazard to the flying public. The military had some operations at the airport this week. They were very professional, and they did a great job of not making too much of a mess of our airport. There were no damages to the airfield, which is really good. And we definitely had some noise complaints about their activity. Yeah. The noise is primarily the ospreys that came in. They produce a very unique sound and vibration. I mean, they really make everything vibrate. They are cool. It was really fun to watch them come in and operate. They followed all of my recommendations, and it was a fantastic operation by the military. I'm very happy with their performance. We are at Nipias Airport, and we are federally funded, and we are always going to be available to the military if they want to use our airport for an operation. Luckily, they are usually very accommodating, and they always check in and figure out our noise abatement procedures and do the best they can. They did a great job. Kim Plant, she has been putting on a lot of hours updating basedaircraft.com. Her efforts are likely going to result in an increase in base aircraft at the airport. This is one of the factors that the FAA looks at when they're considering federal funding for the airport. So this could potentially go a long way. This is something that I took very seriously when I was first hired here and made a lot of progress on basedaircraft.com. But it's a time-consuming process, and some of the tasks that she is working on, she's able to focus more on the details than I was able to, just because I didn't have the time within my workload. So I'm really expecting some positive results from this activity. Tim Poulos has volunteered his time to create decals for the new sign for the local FBOs. So we're going to be filling in the blank spaces, some of which are already filled in, with marketing signs for the fixed-based operators at the airport. So that sign will not look as blank as it is, or it has been, because it's already starting to get filled in. Interviews are underway for the vacant airport operations and maintenance position. We received over 30 applicants for the position in a very short time. We selected 7 of those applicants for interviews, and most of them showed up. And there will be a second round of interviews that will probably be the week of the 28th, and we'll hopefully have a selection shortly after that. Airport operations in the airfield for June were 3,000 according to ADSB data, and for July were 3,215. That was an increase month over month at the airport, and we have detailed charts of those operations below. All right, I probably missed a few things. If anyone has anything for me to add, please let me know. And if anybody has any questions, thank you.
Any questions? Go ahead, John.
Just curious who's doing the interviews for the vacant position? Do you have how many people do you have doing it, and who are they? And then I wanted to also ask if we could put some focus on improving the big wide airport sign as part of fussing up the signage in the front of the airport property.
Absolutely. So the first interview panel is Tim Poulos, Paul Hamilton, myself, and Rick Lee. The second round of interviews will be myself and Rick Lee. Actually, I just misspoke. I have not been included in the first round of interviews. I fully intended to, but the current activities at the airport have required my efforts in other areas. So I had to sit out the first round of interviews. But I will be holding the second round with Rick Lee and myself. The sign in the front of the airport, this is a big component of this new position. These are the types of projects that Rick Lee has not been able to dedicate the required time to. His first priorities are airfield and public safety. That's where he's required to spend most of his time. Simply too many projects for his time and workload. Since he's moved to supervisor of airport operations and maintenance, he's actually been putting in quite a lot of overtime. And he's putting in a lot of hours to try to do his best to cover as much as he can. And it's just too much for one person. And that's why we're hiring a new position. And that's why we're doing these interviews. So the first tasks of the new position are going to be the tasks that are away from the safety areas in the airport. As this person is trained, their initial workload will be outside of the safety areas. So he has plenty of time to get familiarization of the airport and training with operating inside of the safety areas. So probably his first project is going to be a mowing project that is completely out of sight. But it is a major part of the airfield, and it contributes to the wildlife hazards that we have. This is going to be an opportunity for him to learn the mowing equipment and the skid steer equipment, and essentially get familiarized with all the heavy equipment that we have at the airfield. And it's going to go a long way to reducing the bird hazards, as well as the small rodents that attract the coyotes. It should further reduce the wildlife hazards at the airport. Then shortly after that will be the front of the airfield. That first task is a safety task. And then we will not only be repainting that sign at the front of the airfield, but we'll also be bringing in more rock materials to fill in some of the gaps with the new construction, with the new sign. as well as building some solar lighting for the new sign. And those are all projects that are planned for this new employee to execute. So it will be coming soon.
Thanks, Corey. That was a very thorough answer. I just might add, John, all we really need to do on that sign is strip the white paint from it. It's structurally very sound. Strip it and just repaint the backing. It'll look terrific on that sign. So it's not a huge task, but it's something that is just falling down on the priority list. But yeah, it will be done, and we do care about it, so it's going to look good. Any other questions for our airport manager?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Please do.
Falling back to the snowplow information from International. Public Works, Carson City Public Works has waited 2 years for International with nothing going on, and they are going to go to a different platform. Like the state went to the Western Star platform, which is their primary go-to vehicle. So something to think about. You might want to explore that a little more in detail. So just a thought.
All right,
It's
thanks.
a long time.
Thanks, Curtis.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Then we can move on to legal counsel report.
I just have one item to report, and the chairman and the airport manager and I'm confident we'll get it rectified. There was an open meeting law complaint filed against us in 2021 at the time that we hired Corey. And when an open meeting law complaint is filed, the Attorney General's office says, okay, show us that you've complied with all the terms of the open meeting law. I think the language of our item was fine. I think everything was fine. The one thing we were not able to establish was whether our agenda was on the state webpage, the state notice webpage, which is one of the criteria that we publish our notice to. And so at the time, we did the prudent thing, which was we renoticed it for a July meeting and did the whole item over and made sure everything was properly noticed. And we told the Attorney General's office that's what we were going to do to fix it, which is one of the recommendations in the Attorney General's open meeting law manual. I received an email from the AG earlier this week saying, hey, did you ever find out whether you had properly noticed that earlier meeting? Had you gotten on the state webpage? And let us know and provide us documentation showing. And so I reached out again to the Department of Administration that manages that. And the chairman reminded me earlier this evening, we had done this once before and asked them for the information and they couldn't give it to us. Well, it's probably worse now because when I contacted the Department of Administration, they say they have now outsourced that to another entity. And so I'm waiting to hear back from that entity. But my inclination is if we can't get a response, which is I think probably likely, the letter that will go back to the Attorney General will be, we never were able to figure that out, but it doesn't matter because we redid the entire meeting and we did properly notice everything for July 21st. So like I said, I think this problem will go away. I think it's okay. I think basically the AG is looking at, the deputy AG is probably looking at her files and go, oh, I never closed the loop on this. And so I think that's what's going on. Obviously, if it snowballs into something else, I will let you know, but I suspect that this will be rectified relatively soon. I don't have anything else to report on.
All right, thank you, Steve. Well, then that brings us down to report from authority members, non-action items. Is there anything that anyone would like to report as a board member? Oh, wait a minute.
We don't want to do that.
Oh my God, that just, we skipped the treasurer's report. Please. I'd like to have our treasurer, John, go ahead and give us his report.
So this is our first meeting since the end of last fiscal year. So in addition to the spectacular list of activities that Corey mentioned in his report, he has done a fabulous job. He and Rick working together have done a fabulous job of being good stewards of our money. And so the first bit of paper with a bunch of numbers on it in your packet is a budget versus actual for the full year last year, July 2022 to June of 2023. And I just thought I'd bring that up so you guys could see how we did last year. The results were very similar to the previous 2 years. We came in over budget on our revenue side by a significant amount, 15% over budget. And that was driven by an incremental increase in personal property tax as a result of us paying more attention to that area, but also as a result of more and more people basing aircraft at our airport. We also had a banner year in rock sales, and we had a substantial income from interest, $40,000. And so, back when I first took over the treasurer's role, that would have been like cause for a dance and a jig, a big celebration. And now it's just part of an overall good performance on the revenue side. On the expense side, we came in at for operating expenses, we came in 3% under budget. And so the net result was that the airport made about $380,000 last year. And that, on top of the performance in the previous year, has put us in a really solid financial position going forward to do what we want to do, and that is accomplish the capital projects that are on our list, staff ourselves appropriately so that we can get a little bit more coverage, management coverage on the airport, get our capital projects done, and also be on top of our accounting and bookkeeping procedures so that we can move aggressively towards being our own grant sponsor. So we have really done a good job, and I want to really compliment Corey and Rick, but also I think we should all give ourselves a little pat on the back because almost everybody sitting at this table has made a contribution to us being solid financially. So thank you to everybody. So the only other thing, and we do have numbers also for the first month of this fiscal year, and there's no surprises in there.
Okay, John, thank you. Okay, now we can move on to authority members, non-action items. Any comments or status reports on anything anybody like to do? Yes, Michael.
Steve made a reminder here about open meeting law, and it prompted me to think about something. We are hosting a barbecue on the 26th of August from 11 to 1 over at the FBO. I know many of you have received an invitation to it, and I would recommend that we post that however we need to so that we don't have any violations of the open meeting law. I suspect there will be a quorum of board members there.
That's probably a good idea, although the open meeting law says you can go to social events, just don't be talking business, airport authority business at that event. So if you can discipline yourself not to do that, then there's no need to post or anything, and there's no issues with the open meeting law. However, if you get drawn into a discussion and you start discussing more than a quorum of you, or a quorum or more of you start discussing airport business, then there's potential for an open meeting law violation. And posting notice of it is fine. I mean, I notice the city sometimes does that for social events.
Yeah, I felt it would be prudent under the circumstances. I know Tim and I will be there. I'm pretty certain Harlow got an invite and Paul got an invite. I know Corey's going to be there for sure. I don't know if you're going to be there, Steve.
Yep.
Carl indicated to me he'll probably be there. I think we're going to have a quorum at a barbecue. But anyhow, the most important part is we're having everyone from the airport's been invited to lunch on Saturday the 26th.
Is that it for comments? I have a quick comment. I want to offer my sincere thanks and appreciation to Mike and Nadine and Chris. You've been a pleasure to work with. And the vote on the, from the authority from my perspective and observation, was nothing to do with poor performance in any way at all. It's just, it's a weird way we have to do this stuff. We don't even sit down and talk price. We just look at overall proposals, and everybody was top notch on proposals. And but I just, from working with you for the last several years, I just want to thank you, because I just felt very, very good about everything you did for us. And I was in a hot seat for a while, and you guys were there for me. So I want that on the record. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
they're not completely out of the mix yet.
I know.
Because
I
we
know.
negotiate with Wood Rogers, and if we are unable to reach a satisfactory result of that, they're been ranked second, then we go talk to them. So,
Notwithstanding, I wanted to know that I appreciate
Yeah.
working with them.
No,
so
no, no,
thank
I
you.
get it. Yeah.
Okay. Very
Get it.
good. And I also understand. I'm just all of our proposals were really good. So I'm very pleased with that. Now this is we have the last item is public comment. Anybody in the public like to say anything? Yes, please. You have 3 minutes to propose your. If you introduce yourself and give us your topic, we'll be happy to accommodate you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, authorities. And thank you, Mr. Corey. You recognized me from my voice. I was one of the people that called and said, hey, could you ask him to fly higher? I was very fortunate in my life to have pilots in the family or in the vicinity of such. And knowing it's harder to get the plane up in certain weather and certain climates and such, I take that all into consideration. I just don't want to see the nuts and bolts of the bottom side of your plane when you go over. And some of the planes sound like they're a little out of tune. And I know that's a little off for a person that's not a specialist, but just remind everybody keep their maintenance up real good, because that's real important. So I really just appreciated the opportunity to be here today to listen to the process and, well, the outside edges of your process. I don't want to see all the inside works. I would be far too busy. But thank you very much, very much. And no reason to call. I appreciate that you responded earlier. Thank you. And thank you all.
Sir, could you just
Name, sir?
state your
Oh,
name for
I'm
the record?
sorry. I
We need
usually
to-
start by saying Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you.
Danny French. Thank you for your comments. And I have to agree that staff has taken it very seriously, trying to see if there's any way we can safely, mitigate some of that sound. And of course, like you said, safety's first, but if there's an option to adjust things, and our local flight schools and local pilots are pretty cooperative. There's always going to be somebody, but they're in all pretty cooperative. Well, yeah. Thank you. Okay. At this point, does anybody have any agenda items they'd like to have on the next meeting? Nothing at this time? Well, if that's the case, then I propose that this meeting be adjourned. Any seconds?
Second.
All right.
You just adjourned.
It's adjourned.
Nice job, Tim.
Shit.